My work has actually sort of concerned this question, basically looking at different arguments for and against the rationality of religious belief and then the rationality of religious commitment, kind of like you said. And so I think, there's a lot of things to say here. The first thing that I think is really important to note is that I actually think not only is it not irrational to believe in God, but I actually don't even think you have to necessarily be able to cite off a bunch of arguments for God's existence in order for belief in God to be rational. So to kind of argue for this, what I want to do is step back a little bit and look at two of the main theories in epistemology about rationality, or what's sometimes called justification. So a lot of epistemologists use justification and rationality similarly. Basically what it means is it's something you should believe, something that it's good to believe, maybe something that's kind of like you're on the way to knowing, you're on this path to knowledge. So that's what's known as justification or rationality. And in epistemology, there's sort of two main theories or camps. And what I want to try to do is show that on either camp, belief in God can be rational. Okay, so the first camp is what's known as internalism, and the most common version of internalism is what's called evidentialism. Okay, so what this view says what is rational or justified for you to believe depends on your evidence. So you should believe things that are supported by your evidence. You should follow the evidence where it leads. And it's called internalism because in most cases, your evidence is something that you're aware of, right? So if I look outside and see a tree out there, I have evidence that there's a tree. And I'm, aware that I perceive the tree, and then on that basis, I believe that there's a tree. So doing that, seeing a tree outside and believing there's a tree, according to evidentialism, would be justified or rational. Okay, so here's one thing that's really, really important. Now let's talk about externalism. So externalism is the view that when a belief is rational, that's because of the way your mind or your brain is functioning. There's two main versions of it. So on one, it says a belief is rational when it's produced by a reliable process. And then another version of it says that a belief is rational when it's produced by a process that's functioning properly. So these are known as reliabilism and proper functionalism, the two main versions of externalism. And the reason it's called externalism is because it's more about, is your mind or your brain functioning the right way, than it is about whether you have a piece of evidence that you can access. And on this notion of justification or rationality, then I think belief in God is also justified. And there's a couple of, different reasons you can give for this, but I'm going to talk about Plantinga's. Plantinga is one of the most famous externalists, and he also argued that belief in God can be rational. So I'll say a little bit about how Plantinga argues for it. So Plantinga argued, and this view traces back to Calvin and even Augustine, that we have this part of our minds, and it's called the sensus divinitatis. It's kind of a big word, big phrase. That means the sense of the divine. And basically what it is it's part of our minds that's designed to form beliefs about God. So if let me give an example, see a beautiful sunset, and then I think, wow, there's a creator. Someone created this. That would be my sensus divinitatis functioning in me to produce that belief about God. Or maybe I am going on a mountain hike and I get lost and I'm stranded and I'm like, God, please help me. And I believe there's a God that can help me. Again, my sensus divinitatis is causing me to believe that there's a God who can help me and help me find my way back home. And so what these examples are supposed to show is that if Plantinga is right, that there is this sensus divinitatis that functions in these certain ways to have us produce beliefs about God, then when that is reliable and functioning properly, we will believe in God. So what Plantinga argues is that this is actually part of God's design plan, and that if God exists and God created us with this sensus divinitatis, then belief in God can be rational. So that's sort of Plantinga's way of arguing that from externalism, belief in God is rational. But what I think is sort of the overall picture or lesson is that on both of the two main epistemological theories, it can be rational to believe in God, and you don't necessarily have to give off a bunch of arguments for it. So you could think about maybe your grandma who goes to church every week and prays for you every night. And even if your grandma is not aware of the ontological and cosmological arguments, your grandma can still be rational to believe in God. I want to say one more thing before I conclude, and that's I wanted to say something about faith, because I think there's a lot of misunderstandings about faith and the relationship between faith or faith in God and then rationality. Some people think faith is opposed to rationality or reason. And I've even heard people say faith is belief without evidence, or faith is believing something you know isn't true. And I just think that is just not what faith is. That's the wrong definition of faith. And I'll tell you a lot of my research actually involves faith. And here's my view of what faith is. Faith is a commitment to someone or something that involves a belief-like state and a desire-like state. So let me give an example, or maybe two examples, to illustrate this really quick, and then I'll wrap up my answer to this. But let's say if I have faith that you're going to win your upcoming basketball game, I have some kind of commitment to you and your team, and I have some kind of belief-like state. I either believe you're going to win or have high confidence that you're going to win. And I also have some kind of desire-like state. I want you to win. I think it would be a good thing if you won. So notice, I haven't said it's belief without evidence. I haven't said it's believing something that you don't know. And I do think faith plays an important role in helping keep our commitments over time. So faith plays an important role in a religious commitment, or in a marriage, or even, maybe in a commitment to finish something for your job, or finish a degree, or learn a new instrument. Faith plays a role in these commitments, and sometimes can help keep us going even if we get some counter evidence. But that doesn't mean that faith is belief without evidence. And so I don't think we should define faith as this inherently irrational thing. And in fact, I think faith is often rational, especially when it meets certain conditions. And we can maybe talk more about that later. But yeah, so to sum up, it's not irrational to believe in God. Given internalism, there's a good reason to think a lot of people that believe in God have evidence that God exists. And given externalism, if you buy Plantinga's argument, there's a sensus divinitatis. It's not irrational to believe in God.